Hey everyone, this is Jeff Colhane, voice of the Florida State Seminoles, and you're listening to the Phillip Jordan Show podcast.
What's up, everybody, and welcome into another edition of the Phillip Jordan Show podcast. I am your host, Phillip Jordan, in studio host and producer of Dustin Football on 96.9 The Legend and Writer for the Auburn Wire, where we cover all things Auburn athletics. Hope everybody is having a great week so far, coming at you on a Wednesday, and we got a big show for you here on the podcast this week. Just a little bit, I'll be joined by Locked On SEC host Chris Gordy. Will get his thoughts on the SEC media poll, the order of finish, which I'm just about to go over in just a second. We're also going to touch on Texas. We will touch on Georgia, LSU, Alabama, Auburn, and I'm also going to ask Chris who are some under the radar teams in the SEC to look out for. So should be a lot of fun here on this edition of the Phillip Jordan Show podcast. You can check out the Phillip Jordan Show podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast. If you're on Apple Podcasts, please follow, rate, and review. Leave a review, and I will read it on a future edition of the show. And if you leave just 4 stars, you're just a straight-up hater. You can also check out the show over on YouTube at the Phillip Jordan Sports YouTube channel. Hit that subscribe button, hit the bell for all notifications, and please leave a comment on the video, and I'll read it on a future edition as well. You can always email me at sports.philipjordan@gmail.com. You can follow me on social media at pjordansec. All right, so as I said there off the top, Chris Gordy will be joining me momentarily here on the show. Just kind of like a little preamble before we get to that conversation. And we go a good 30 minutes with Chris. We planned 20, but we went 30, and it was really a lot of great SEC talk here on the show today. The SEC order finished last week, SEC Media Days. And this is kind of like not the really meat of this open, but just kind of go over it just to give you a refresher, some thoughts on where everybody's at going into that conversation. Of course, Texas comes out number 1. Look, nobody's surprised that Texas came out number 1, picked to win the SEC. They were overwhelming being picked to win the SEC, but still, a lot of questions, and you'll hear Chris talk about this. They have some players to replace, and defensively, I really like what they have on the defensive side of the football, especially when you look at Anthony Hill at linebacker, one of the best defensive players in all of college football. They got some good players on defense front, Colin Simmons, Trey Moore there, and also in the defense backfield as well. So they have a lot of good players. They open up against Ohio State on the road, which Ohio State's breaking in a new quarterback. Yes and no, Texas breaking new quarterback, new starter, full-time starter, yes, with Arch Manning. And look, and I've been talking to people, I've been telling people, here's my thoughts on this. He has so much pressure on him to meet expectations. First off, there's the family name, Arch Manning, the Manning part of that. He not only has to live up to his grandfather, Archie Manning, but also his 2 uncles, Peyton and Eli. Now, he can do something in college that they were not able to do, and that is win a national championship. All right. So also those are those expectations. He's got to live up to that name. People are always going to be judging him against Archie and then also his 2 uncles. Also now Texas. Texas is going to be one of the heavy favorites going into this year to win a national championship. Can Arch help deliver that? If he has some struggles, what will people be saying? Will he be able to handle it? They lose that first game against Ohio State, and if he don't play well, there's going to be questions. And again, this is part of our conversation with Chris, but they played Georgia. They lost to them twice last year. If they turn around and lose to them again this year, what's going to be the questions with Arch? Will Georgia be his Florida like what it was with Peyton Manning going up against the Florida Gators? All right, Georgia comes in number 2. My biggest question, I know they're talented at running back. They've got receivers. They're going to be great on defense. They're going to be well coached. Georgia's going to be one of the best teams in the country. But I've been saying all season, how will Gunnar Stockton be at the quarterback position? And look, he don't have to be great. Doesn't have to be what Carson Beck was 2 years ago. No, don't be what Carson Beck was last year, throwing interceptions all over the place. But Gunnar Stockton, just do enough. Be a good quarterback. Be a facilitator. Don't turn the ball over. Because defensively, they're going to be great. They're going to be one of the best defenses in college football. So you don't have to throw for 400 yards if you're the quarterback for Georgia. Hand the ball off. Throw it to the right guys. Find the open players. Make big plays when you have to. Will Gunnar Stockton be able to do that? That's just my big question with them. Alabama, it's kind of the same deal. Talented all over the place. Ty Simpson and the quarterback. How we play Ryan Grubb coming in, offensive coordinator, very intrigued by that. I think for LSU, we all know they're going to be good offensively. Can Garrett Nussmeier limit the turnovers? He threw 12 interceptions last year. We had 4 games with 2 or more interceptions. Cut down on the turnovers. And defensively for LSU. LSU should be a playoff team. Honestly, if I was doing the ranking right now going into season, I would put LSU over Alabama. That's just my opinion. South Carolina is going to be the darlings. They're going to be the team everybody's going to talk about in the conference because they went 9-3 last year in the regular season. I'm going to count the bowl game. Everybody said, oh, this is a team that if they had made the playoff, they could have made some noise. We'll see what this team's able to do. Rocket Raheem Sanders is not there anymore with Lenore Sellers. So that big backfield they had last year, finding that run game. Florida, a lot of expectations with DJ Lagway coming in. We'll see what they do there. Now, can you capitalize on the momentum you had toward the end of last year when you were playing so well? Ole Miss is really an under-the-radar team this year. I want to see how they are defensively, Ole Miss going into the year. I'm not worried about quarterback. I'm never going to be worried about quarterback as long as Lane Kiffin is the coach there. A&M, can you do better than 8-4? That's all I got to say about you there. Tennessee, the Nico situation. I feel like Tennessee would be higher if Nico was still there. They did not have that whole deal go down, but we'll see. We'll see what Heupel can do. A lot of people believe Oklahoma, who's at number 10 in these, the order to finish prediction here from the SEC media poll. Oklahoma. A lot of people think they're going to be an improved team. They got Mateer coming in at quarterback. Will they be better at wide receiver? That was a big reason why Jackson Arnold's not at Auburn. Auburn, Hugh Freeze. It all comes down to Jackson Arnold. And I said this all last year, I know. So before people just get on me, I know I said last year, if Peyton Thorne is just good, Auburn should be all right. I'm going to say it here. If Jackson Arnold is just good, Auburn should be all right. We'll see what Missouri does at 12. Vandy at 13. That's a team that can upset you. Arkansas, Kentucky, Mississippi State finish up the bottom 3 there. And, of course, always when you look at media days, you want to see what the commissioner has to say. And Greg Sankey said a lot of interesting things last week, and it's my first time really talking to you about it. Just didn't get to that on the pod last week. Had a lot of stuff going on. Just had the Jeff Culhane interview. Gave that to you guys. I really didn't get a chance to talk about stuff. I also talk about common sense geography. I think he's always taking a shot at the ACC, the Big 12, and the Big 10 because they're just all over the map there. I mean, ACC has a team in Texas, and they have 2 teams out west. Of course, the Big 10's all over the place, Big 12 as well. Adjust the seating in college football playoff. I'm big on that. What I think last year, it was just so confusing for a lot of people when you would watch the selection show or when they released the rankings. So you would see 1 through 12, but then the seeding would be weird just because the top 4 ranked conference champions would be your top 4 seeds. Now let's just get rid of that. It's the 12 teams. I'm for that. I'm happy for that. Now, 9 games has been a topic for several years in the SEC. I am for one that is 4. I believe they should go to 9. I think everybody should play the same amount of conference games of all the power conferences in the playoff. I think that's just a good measuring point for these teams. Now, and I'm a big SEC guy. You obviously see the handle if you're watching on YouTube and on Facebook on video. You see my Twitter handle there. It's P. Jordan SEC. I do believe the 8 games the SEC play are tougher than any of the 9 that the other 3 power team conferences play. That's just my opinion, and it's the right opinion. But at the same time, I think there should be some uniform rules or systems in place with scheduling. I think scheduling does need to be more balanced across the board in college football. Of course, the SEC, therefore, the 5+11 model. The Big 10 is for automatic qualifiers, and we're about to get into that. So I'm coming to you on a Wednesday morning. This is when the pod is getting released. On Tuesday, the Big Ten Media Day started. We also have the ACC Media Days. Sunbelt Media Days is going on as well. But Tony Petitti, the commissioner of the Big Ten, talked about, obviously, the Big Ten and the SEC are not thinking the same way as this. And let's be honest, these are the two conferences that are going to determine, we go to 16, how we're going to do it, how is it going to look. With them, they're all for the 4 + 4 + 2 + 2 + 1 model, which is this, if you don't know, 4 Big Ten teams, 4 SEC teams, 2 ACC, 2 Big 12 teams, 1 group of 6, 3 at large. I really say 2 at large because we know Notre Dame's getting one of those spots. I also want playing games. I am against playing games 100%. I'm against automatic qualifiers because you could have a situation in the Big Ten. You know what? Just so we can get rid of the SEC bias that I'm probably going to get thrown at by anybody that may be checking this out. Let's flip around. All right. You have 4 Big Ten teams, 4 SEC teams getting ready to go in here. All right. So, but what if the 15 for one of the conferences is better than the number 4 team? But they get in because they're a top 4 team. And then same thing with the ACC. Maybe they don't have 2 teams, worthy of being in the playoffs. Same thing with the Big 12. And look, this is going to give me some hate. I know this. And look, I'm wearing a Troy hat. I'm obviously a fan of one of these group of 6 conferences, the Sun Belt. I go to Troy. I'm a student there. But I just don't think that a group of 6 should be automatically given a playoff spot. It should be hard. You should have to earn all these spots. And I'm just automatic qualifiers. No, we need to have the 16 best teams playing for the college football national championship, and not just automatically given 4 from here, 4 from there, then 2 from there, 2 from there. I'm just not for it. But obviously, the Big Ten, they're not for the 5 + 11. Basically, I guess they think it'd be too much criteria that you would have to measure in data and all that, blah, 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 blah. And then also with them, I'm just against the playing games. Basically, you're telling us you want an even and more expanded playoff because those are playoff games. It's just like the NBA does their play-in tournament to go into play. That is the playoffs. I'm sorry. That's why I always tell people 20 of the 30 NBA teams make the playoffs. This is what this is. This is an extended playoff. It's all it is. And you can dress it up. You can call it what you want. Hey, you can put lipstick on a pig. It's still a pig. That is a postseason. That is a playoff. That is more teams. I'm against the play-in because there's a chance you could have a team that has no business making the playoff, just like you have it in the NBA, and they get in because on one day they got lucky. That's all I'm going to say. There was an injury or turnovers, weather. I don't know. I'm against it. I just don't like the playing thing, and I hope Greg Sankey and the SEC continue to be stubborn over that. And, kind of adding on, because on 3, Brett McMurphy had said this a while back. Big Ten won't support a 5 + 11 as long as SEC stays 8-game conference schedule. And that is a storyline that is old as water is wet. So it is going to be interesting with that side of things with the 2 conferences. Obviously, they are the power brokers of college football, the SEC and the Big Ten. So we shall see how all this goes down. All right, so now I'm going to play my conversation with Chris Gordy from Locked On SEC. Like I said, we go a good 30 minutes, and then I'll wrap up after that. And I guess some quite somber news for your host, Phillip Jordan. But here is that conversation with Chris Gordy from Locked On SEC. Everybody joining me on the show this week. So I had this guy on. He was at SEC Media Days last week. Obviously, one of the best voices in the SEC, host of Locked On SEC, also program director and on air over at Sports Talk 790 in Houston. Yes, I'm joined by Chris Gordy. And Chris, appreciate you coming on the show.
Yeah, no problem, man. Good to be back on with you.
Yeah, it's been a while. Last week was kind of interesting with SEC Media Days. I'll just go ahead and start off with this. It got started off on a good note, I guess. Greg McElroy decided to trend all over the place and floated out that Nick Saban stuff last week.
Yeah, I almost wonder if somebody paid him to do that because it was just very uncharacteristic. Like Greg has been awesome ever since he transitioned into media years ago, and he's gotten better and better as a color analyst on games. Like he's really good. Does the show with Cole up there in Birmingham, and for him to put something out there like that, like he's not a hot take artist or whatever. So like, you had to feel like it was some bit of credible. But here's the thing, like Nick Saban saying he wants to get back into coaching. I feel like every coach who retires has that want and that itch.
Mm-hmm.
So, if you really dissect it, I didn't think it was like breaking news. Like, oh, breaking news, Nick Saban wants to coach again. Yeah, no duh. But like, does the universe align for him to actually get back into it? That's where it's like, I don't think so. So yeah, it was a fun story to kick around. And, our buddy Zach Blackerby, we did an episode kind of kicking around like, all right, if he did go back, where would he go? And then I think we kind of decided like, if he went anywhere, it would be for like a 1 or 2 year deal. It would have to be a spot where they have a general manager in place who's going to handle all the NIL and payments to players and all that kind of stuff, revenue share. And all Saban would do is come in and oversee the roster and, be like the game day coach. And that's it. And so we were like, well, like Oklahoma would be really cool because they just hired Jim Nagy, who used to be with the Senior Bowl for forever. And if Brent Venables doesn't work out, that might be a good fit to step in there. But I think the one we had the most fun with, it was if Hugh Freeze gets fired at Auburn. I think it would be ultimate heel turn to see Nick Saban step up to the podium, put on an Auburn polo, and stand there awkwardly and be like, it's always been my dream to coach at Auburn. I think it would never happen in a million years. But if we were writing a script, that would be by far one of the funniest things to ever happen.
If that happened, I just kind of wonder what would just be the reaction in Tuscaloosa.
They would tear down his statue. I mean, they already built the statue. I mean, it would be torn down. They would probably, set on fire Tumor's Corner trees. Like they would set that back 100 years. Like, it would be all hell would break loose. Which again, it would never happen. And even if it came an inkling of possibly happening, Alabama donors and Bama people would step up to the plate and go, Nick, we will pay you whatever amount it is to not go to Auburn. So, but anyway, he's not going to coach again. It was just a fun story to kick around for a couple of days.
Yeah. To me, what was funny to me, though, with it was I think the next day on his own radio station, he was going on a tour letting everybody know that he did not think Nick Saban was coming back. That was a funny part of it, too.
Yeah, I mean, again, he said it was from a credible source. Like, that's the thing. And I kept saying, like, who's your credible source? Jimmy Sexton? Like, is this just for him to drive up the asking price on Nick or to maybe get more money out of College Game Day going, hey, Nick might go coach again. Let's make sure we take care of him here. So I don't know, but yeah, fun story.
Yeah, it was. The media poll coming out on Friday. I think most people would believe you tell Texas is going to be the number one team. Nobody would be shocked. Were you surprised by how kind of overwhelming they were the number one team picked by the media?
I was, and I mentioned it on our podcast. I voted for Georgia. I just thought, and look, Georgia's got a lot of new pieces. Don't get me wrong. It's not like they are, that I thought they should be the prohibitive favorite. I just thought that most people were going to lean towards, Kirby getting the benefit of the doubt. Georgia gets the benefit of the doubt. I mean, even last year, for all that went wrong with them, with all the picks that Carson back threw and all that, they still go back and tell Steve Sarkisian in Texas, hey, at halftime of the SEC championship game, you're going to knock out Carson back. Did anybody feel like right there, you put all your money on Texas, they're going to come back and win the SEC championship? And they didn't. Gunnar Stockton played well enough, moved the ball, and the defense played well, and Georgia still won that game. Georgia went 2-0 against Texas last year. And so they got to play again this year. And guess what? That game is in Athens. So again, that's why I go Georgia to me is the they give the benefit of the doubt, but everybody's giving it to Texas. And look, Texas lost a lot, and Sark has recruited great there. And I'm an Arch Manning fan. Like, I think he's going to be awesome down the road. But I think right out of the gates, I think they got a lot to get figured out here. And to me, they have not earned the benefit of the doubt. Sark's got to prove it still. Kirby's got a long track record there, Georgia, of reloading. We interviewed Kirby last week, and I said to him, I said, you at Georgia, you don't rebuild, you reload. Texas, I don't know if they reload. They've never, this is their second year in the SEC. but they lost a ton of that offensive line to the draft and to graduation. And so, yeah, Arch Manning hype aside, you got several new offensive linemen you got to work in. You got some new defensive linemen you're working in, new receivers. Like that's another one of the underrated things we're not talking about. Matthew Golden being a first-round pick and all those other pieces that they lost, they're gone. Like they've got to work all those pieces in. I like Ryan Wingo. He was a freshman last year. He'll step up and, maybe that be that go-to target for Arch. But yeah, I was a little shocked by how overwhelming that the media voted for Texas. And look, I think LSU got some votes too. I was talking with some folks last week. JD Piquel over at On3. He seems to be very high on LSU and Brian Kelly. And, I think what's crazy is in this day and age of the transfer portal, we hear certain guys went places, but I think we kind of glanced over the fact that LSU had the number one portal class on top of a top 10 recruiting class, and they filled a lot of holes with quality starters. That's the difference. Like last year in the portal, LSU added like backup guys or rotational guys. This year they added quality starters that are going to step in and start, from Jack Pyburn to Patrick Payton to Mansour Delane in the secondary. Like they added some quality players. And so, again, would not shock me at all if LSU would get there. I think my official prediction was Georgia beats LSU in Atlanta, but I still think there's a good chance that Texas, Georgia, LSU, and Alabama are all four in the playoff.
Yeah, and with Georgia, that's one of the teams I wanted to hit on. Gunnar Stockton, because they did go out and put some talent around him. You got Colby Young and Dylan Bell coming back. Oscar Depp at tight end. We know they're going to run the ball, play defense. Zykeia Branch from USC. You got Noah Thomas coming in from A&M. But just for a little bit we saw Gunnar Stockton last year, second half in SEC championship game, and then obviously in the playoff game, he's had the whole offseason to get him ready. How confident are you in him being able to deliver big wins in SEC championship and potentially a national championship for Georgia?
It was funny talking with some of the folks at Georgia. A few of them told me, they said, of all the things that Georgia has, the one thing I'm least worried about is Gunnar Stockton. That they think he can just kind of be that game manager and and be the guy. Like that was the problem with Carson Beck last year. It wasn't he was bad. At times when he was good, he was awesome. Mm-hmm. But when he was bad, like when he threw those picks, it was like, dude, what are you doing? And he had like that stretch where he threw like 6, 7, 8 interceptions in like a 4-week span. It was like, what in the world is going on here? And really put him behind the 8 ball. So I think Gunnar Stockton, as long as he protects the football, doesn't do that, I think a lot is dependent on their, on the run game getting back to what it was. Last year was the first time it felt like Georgia didn't have that dominant run game that they're so used to having. And a big part of it was all the injuries, to the guys, Robinson and all the different guys they have back there. But they bring back Nate Frazier, who was a true freshman, showed some glimpses last year. And then they go and get Josh McCray out of the portal, who, was a 1,000-yard rusher at Illinois last year. So I think those two guys, with their offensive line being solid, this might be the best, like on paper, receiving core that Georgia's had in a while under Kirby. When you talk about Colby Young, who came in last year from Miami, you got Dylan Bell, who's going into his senior year, former high school running back that can play scat back / receiver. Zykeia Branch was one of the big portal acquisitions coming in from USC. You mentioned Noah Thomas, who I loved at A&M. How about London Humphreys? Started his career at Vanderbilt, came to Georgia last year, could take another step in his development. So I love the pass catching weapons they have. You said Oscar Delp, Lawson Lucky. It feels like they've both been there forever. So
yes,
I like it, man. I like the pieces they have on offense. To me, it's about, can that defense get back to being the suffocating defense? Because you go back and look at the numbers. Like, we're so used to Georgia being top 10 in every defensive statistic. They were not last year. They were like middle of the pack in a lot of categories. And so, look, it starts with Dalen Everett, KJ Bolden, and those guys in the secondary locking down opponents. CJ Allen obviously is a wrecker at linebacker, but who's going to be the guys to emerge on that defensive line? I had somebody tell me they think Christian Miller is set for a monster year. I heard Jordan Hall is a guy to watch for. So yeah, if they can get some kind of pressure up front, then it might be back to being the old suffocating dominant Georgia defenses.
And last year, some of their biggest games was on the road. So that flips this year. The two probably biggest road games are at Tennessee and at Auburn. Obviously, games they're going to be favored in. So that's also kind of working in their direction this year. Not the road schedule is not as daunting as it was last season.
Yeah, and I think that Auburn game, did they announce it as a night game, I believe? So, that's tough, man. Jordan Hare, when it's rocking and sold out at night. Keep in mind, last time they went there, they needed a miracle from Brock Bowers late to put that game away. So, yeah, I'm with you. I mean, look, you get Alabama at home, they'll be heavily favored there. I think getting Tennessee week 3 on the road, that's a good spot because they may still be working in Joey Aguilar and trying to get him used to that offense there. So you're right. I mean, and then Texas at home, they went 2-0 against them last year. I don't see any reason why they can't beat them again. So schedule sets up great for Kirby, even if they have 2 pitfalls. I mean, 10-2 gets you in.
Yeah, if Texas gets beat by Georgia, and you got to start thinking with that team and that staff, it's like, okay, we not just beat Georgia. It'd be kind of like how Georgia was having that problem with Alabama. Then it's the other way around where Texas just can't knock off Georgia. And you mentioned LSU. I'm really interested in this team because offense with Garrett Nussmeier coming back from just a talent standpoint, I think the best returning quarterback in the conference. And then what they have around him at receiver, the defense, with Harold Perkins coming back healthy, what they've added there. But how big a year is this for Brian Kelly? I'm not about to say hot seat for Brian Kelly, but just getting this team to the playoff, which they hadn't done in his first 3 years.
Yeah, well, I think hot seat is fair to say year 4, the expectation is to get to the playoff. If you really want to be tight, so there's some LSU fans saying he needs to win a championship because the 3 previous coaches all did it in their first 4 years on the job. Nick Saban did it, Les Miles did it, and Ed Ogeron did it. And so, again, I don't think it's crazy to say, remember, he's the one that stood up there and said, why'd you leave Notre Dame? Oh, because I didn't think I could win a title there. Well, now pressure's on because Marcus Freeman just went to the national championship last year. He lost, but he still got there. And that was the problem with Brian Kelly. He was like, look, I can make the championship game. I can make the playoffs at Notre Dame, but we can't get over that hump. We don't have the quality athlete to get over it. At LSU, I mean, you got those kind of kids growing in your backyard. And he's done a great job recruiting and like we said, through the transfer portal. But it's all got to come together. The schedule's tough, man. I mean, open on the road to Clemson, it doesn't get any tougher than that. I almost wish they could flip-flop and open with a Marshall or a Citadel or something and get your legs under you and feel pretty good. But then again, maybe it's a good test that they need right out of the gates. If they win at Clemson, I mean, everybody's going to be putting them up as maybe the number 1, number 2 team in the country after that game. And basically it buys them two more losses. They can lose on the road in Tuscaloosa. They can lose at Ole Miss, home at Oklahoma. You pick any of those 2, you can lose 2 and still make the playoffs. So, I think this roster is loaded. It's all about this offensive line, how well they protect and how well they run block. And it's funny because they lose Will Campbell, who was the top 10 pick in the draft. They lose Emory Jones, who was a second or third rounder. But at times, they didn't play like that last year. At times, LSU couldn't run the football, and at times, they couldn't protect Nussmeier. I mean, on the road in the swamp in Florida in the second half, Nussmeier got sacked like 7 times. So I almost see it as like, people are like, oh, well, they're going to be worse. Well, I don't know, man. There were times where we couldn't get much worse last year. So, I'm really curious about the offensive line. I do think it will be one of those situations where Nuss is going to get rid of the ball very quickly because they got a ton of weapons, man. I mean, I interviewed Chris Hilton last week in Media Days. He's a deep threat that they missed like the first, whatever it was, 7-8 games of the season. He finally got back healthy on the backstretch of the year. And look at what he did against Vanderbilt and Oklahoma and then Baylor in the bowl game. Like, he was awesome. And then you bring in Nick Anderson from Oklahoma, who's a deep threat as well. Barry and Brown, who's got track speed from Kentucky, to go with Aaron Anderson, who emerged as their number 1 wide receiver last year. So LSU's got weapons. And yeah, again, if they can capitalize and weather the storm of the schedule, they absolutely 10-2 or better and should be in the playoff.
Yeah, and then I'll also throw this in there because it's kind of a local flavor from where I'm from in Dothan. Bauer Sharp coming over from Oklahoma, who was their most reliable receiver. This is a guy who started quarterback in high school, went to Southeast Louisiana, turned himself into a very, very good college tight end. So that's something there too you have in the middle with Bauer Sharp.
Yeah, and he's only supposed to be the number 2 tight end. They have this freak, Trades Green is his name, who played basketball. And my God, I was at the Texas Bowl in Houston watching him against Baylor, and I was like, who is this freak mismatch? Like, get that kid the ball. And it was like in the red zone, he's just like, I'm open, like, touchdown. It was like, okay, that's a weapon to watch for next year. So it's no offense. You lose Mason Taylor, who obviously big time draft pick and son of Jason Taylor, and he was phenomenal his career, one of the best tight ends in LSU history. But that said, again, targets everywhere. They got to execute. To me, LSU lost games last year. It wasn't because of Nussmeier. It was because that defense couldn't get stops. I was at the game in Las Vegas against USC. They went down the field and scored. They had a lead in that fourth quarter, and they let it slip away. And they let USC go right down the field and score the game winner on them. In a couple weeks, you'll see this Netflix series coming out. Episode 1, on the SEC. Episode 1 focuses on LSU and South Carolina in that game in Columbia. They were an eyelash away from hitting the game-tying field goal and sending that game into overtime, South Carolina was. So LSU was lucky to get out with the win there. I just think Blake Baker, they got to be looking at this defense and saying, this unit has to play better than last year. And yes, it helps getting Harold Perkins next, healthy back next to the tackling machine that is Whit Weeks. So if LSU's defense play, like we're going to see a week 1, if they get stops and forcing turnovers on Clemson, look out. This could be a championship contending LSU team.
Yeah, absolutely. Looking at Alabama, of course, coming off year 1 with Kalen DeBoer, 9-4 Alabama fans, that's not where they want to be. You beat Oklahoma, you probably make the playoff, but the season was what it was for them. They got so much talent on the team. Defense should be good. They've got the playmakers, but I think the big question has got to be quarterback with Ty Simpson. What's your big thing with Alabama going into this year?
Yeah, I got to talk with Ty Simpson a little bit, the Manning Passing Academy, a few weeks ago, and I just like the kid a lot. I mean, he's confident. He's not cocky, but he's confident in himself, and is a guy who sat and waited his turn. And I hate to keep making the comparison, but Mac Jones is the best comparison I can make. Big time recruit that sat and waited and finally gets his chance, and now it's his turn. And everybody's telling me this Ryan Grubb hire is going to be a big difference maker for Alabama, and so if it is, and this offense is better, then yeah, the sky's the limit for this team. You mentioned the offense. I love what they, obviously look, Ryan Williams is the all everything, but you bring back Jeremy Bernard, nice senior leader, and then Isaiah Horton, you go get him out of the portal. I didn't realize, talking with Ty Simpson, that they played together in high school, that they know each other real well. And so that works out. But to me, I love the offensive line, Brailsford and bringing in Cam Dewberry, and got Caden Proctor, who I stood next to at SEC Media Days, who is a behemoth. They got to get back to running the football. I mean, Alabama just did not do it consistently last year. Ty Simpson was the run game most games, but I'll put it this way: like that game against Vanderbilt, they win that game with a better run game. And I don't know if it's Jam Miller, I don't know if it's Richard Young or one of these younger guys emerging, but they've got to find a more consistent run game. It doesn't have to be Derrick Henry and insert dominant Bama back in the last 20 years, but they just have to be a little bit more balanced. And then defensively, I love the secondary. I think they have a chance to be one of the best secondaries in football. And then obviously the linebacking core with Deontay Lawson, getting Justin Jefferson back was huge because there was some talk of him going in the portal, out the portal. But I look at this defensive line. We interviewed Tim Keenan at Media Days, and I like him a lot. Up the middle is a big run stuffer. Where is the edge rusher? Bama's been lacking since Will Anderson Jr. and Dallas Turner left. Who's that next big feared edge guy? And we haven't seen it yet. I'm hoping one of these guys can emerge. And if they do, man, they're going to have a low. Coach Womack he's just scratching the surface on what this defense could be.
Yeah, for Alabama offensively last year, it just felt like it was either, their offense was all about the big play. He did not the sustained drives, which a consistent running game adds to that. Like it seemed like last season, every time they were asked or they would look like they were going on a long drive, a turnover, some penalties, something would get in their way, and then they just couldn't do it. But the big play to Ryan Williams or Jalen Miller or something like that. So that I think that's going to be interesting with them. Can they just sustain drives? Add that running game, that'll happen.
Yeah, and again, that's just being disciplined too. Is the penalties? I mean, how many times I remember that Oklahoma game? Remember they score that long touchdown? You're like, oh, they might get back into this, and then penalty called back. It's like it just cannot happen. When you have a chance to score, you got to punch it in. Now, look, some of it was on Milroe. There's blame to go all around, but I do think Ty Simpson being here, year 2 of the DeBoer system with Ryan Grubb coming in, I think they're going to be way more cohesive and on the same page this year.
So the final thing I want to touch on, the SEC's leading golf expert, Hugh Freeze, and it's it's obviously been all over the place with his golfing, how much golf he's been playing, especially in the month of June. Obviously going year 3. I think when he got hired at Auburn, everybody said, okay, he's going to do obviously a better job than Brian Harsin. The records are not showing it. Recruiting, yes, he's brought it. The roster is completely more talented than what they were for. Obviously, the quarterback has been a big deal. Going on from Peyton Thorne to Jackson Arnold. Just what's your feeling about Auburn, and do you see Hugh Freeze on the hot seat this year?
Well, he's definitely on the hot seat if this thing doesn't get better. I mean, look, I love how he tried to change the standard a few weeks ago when, he goes, hey, look, everybody understands our mission is to get to a bowl game. It's like, okay, no, nobody's saying like, I mean, it would be an improvement. Yeah. But nobody's going, oh my God, I hope we go to a bowl game this year. Could we hopefully the Birmingham Bowl would be awesome. Going to Shreveport. Oh my God, if we could go to the Independence Bowl, like no Auburn fan is saying that. So, look, I don't think playoffs should be on their mind, but like 8-4 and laying a foundation and building this thing up, and then you bring a bunch of these dudes back next year, like this could be the year where they lay the foundation. Don't get it twisted. Hugh Freeze wasted everybody's time with Peyton Thorne. No offense to the kid, but that just was not the guy. And then to waste 2 years on him, I thought was like, the fact that they didn't bring in another transfer portal quarterback last year just speaks volumes. I'll go back a few years ago where LSU had what they thought was a pretty good quarterback room. Miles Brennan was coming in as like the 6-year senior, the incumbent. Everybody thought he was going to be the guy. And then we hear Jaden Daniels from Arizona State's transferred, and everybody's going, what? Why? Why are you going to add it? Like, he's not going to play. This is Miles Brennan's team.
Mm-hmm.
And then lo and behold, they get the just spring ball, and Jaden Daniels is balling out, and suddenly Miles Brennan retires from football. And so I think a lot of people were kind of taken aback by that. But yeah, like point is, put as many dudes as you can in that room. Lane Kiffin a couple years ago with Jackson Dart went and got, I forget the kid's name, but a kid from Oklahoma State that is Spencer Sanders, I think, threw for a ton of yards in his career at Oklahoma State. He comes to Oxford, he doesn't play, but it was a great insurance plan for Lane Kiffin. And lo and behold, he may have pushed Jackson Dart and made him better. And that's where I thought Hughes should have done last year was, even if you think Peyton Thorne's the guy, bring in somebody to push him. And I'm sorry, Hank Brown and Holden Garrett were not going to be those guys. And look at where they are now at Texas State and Iowa, I think. So, that tells you the caliber of quarterback you had there. So Jackson Arnold he's a legit quarterback. Yes, he was a victim of a terrible circumstance at Oklahoma last year with so many banged up weapons from offensive line to wide receiver injuries. It was a nightmare. We've seen if Jackson Arnold has good players around him, he can be very good. And I think that's what he's going to have at Auburn. And I think this offensive line led by Connor Lew is going to be very good. But look, we're all excited to see what Cam Coleman does as a true sophomore. I think we're excited to see what Eric Singleton does, transfer from Georgia Tech. We'll wait and see what happens with the legal stuff with Malcolm Simmons. But, Perry Thompson, the other one that barely gets any mention, Horatio Fields is another one that is a transfer portal guy that, from Wake Forest that I've heard, keep an eye out for him. So I'm a little worried about the backfield, Damari Alston, Jimrai Cobb. Hopefully they can find some kind of, maybe running back by committee back there. This is the year I wish you had like a Tank Bigsby or a Jarquez Hunter. There would be no doubt you wouldn't have any problem back there. But and the defense, I think, is going to be good. Keldrick Falk he's been a monster since he stepped on campus. So I think defense is going to be really solid. But the question is, to me, the season starts on that Friday night at Baylor. It's a must win. You have to win now. It's not like Waco is a tough place to play. Win by 1 point, win by 25. I don't care how you do it. Just get out of there with a win, because you come home with Ball State, come home with South Alabama, and then it's that road trip to Oklahoma, and they are going to win blood. The Sooner faithful are going to be screaming bloody murder at Jackson Arnold, and so that is going to be a tough test. And then you're at A&M and then home for Georgia. That is as tough of a stretch as you can get. But I think, again, this is going to be a much improved team. Hugh Freeze better not prove me wrong, because when they hired him, I said this is a tremendous hire. Hugh Freeze is a winner everywhere he's been, at Liberty and Ole Miss. And his one place he hasn't been a winner is Auburn so far. So he has got to be better this year. If not, he'll find himself unemployed sooner rather than later.
Yeah, and I agree with you. That first game is, but that's just the season to me, because if you win that, it gives you momentum for the rest of the way, and then that back to back at Oklahoma, at Texas A&M, that's gonna be a tough one. Just going back to back, because as you said, and then Jackson Arnold's gonna want to prove something too, going back to Oklahoma, and then you got A&M the next week. So yeah, so we'll see. Auburn's going to be worth watching. I think that's going to be for sure how they do it. I know I told you 20 minutes, so one quick question, if it's okay. We talked about all these teams. Of course, South Carolina was number 5 in the media poll. But when you look at the SEC, do you see maybe a under the radar team? Because last year, South Carolina was a team at the end of the year. I said, man, if that team had just got into the playoff, they could have created some damage. They could have won a few games. Do you see a under the radar team in the SEC that a lot of people are talking about? It might not necessarily be a playoff team, but toward the end of the season in contention for that.
Yeah, I think it was interesting. They have Missouri pinned as the 12th team in the predicted order of finish. I think Missouri, when you look at their schedule, it is very navigatable. So, like if Bo Perbula is pretty good, the quarterback from Penn State, he's got some legs. He's a dual threat. We haven't seen or heard anything really about him since he's gotten to Mizzou. So if Bo Perbula is the real deal, and Eli Drinkwitz is a good offensive mind, like he's had some good offenses there and gotten the most of what he's had. The thing to look at, they went and got Ahmad Hardy. I think he went to Louisiana Monroe, one of those places, 1,000-yard rusher. This is a legit back. And since Eli Drinkwitz has been at Mizzou, he has had some really good running backs. You go back to Larry Roundtree, Cody Schrader. I mean, guys who have been really good running backs in the SEC. So if Ahmad Hardy's the real deal and Bo Perbula is pretty good, that schedule sets up for Mizzou that they can go 10-2. The other one is Ole Miss. I keep saying I think it'd be hilarious if the year after they were supposed to make the playoff with Jackson Dart and all these other pieces, that they make the playoff the next year with Austin Simmons. But the schedule's still what it was. It's a navigatable schedule. And so if Ole Miss can win their tough games at home and pull off an upset or two on the road, that's a team that certainly could be in the thick. And then the third one I'll just throw in there is watch out for Arkansas. I had Taylor Green on Locked on SEC last offseason, talked about coming over from Boise State. He loved Bobby Petrino and said Bobby Petrino was showing him film of Lamar Jackson and, showing him this is kind of some of the wrinkles of the offense we have. I thought he was pretty good last year, but too many mistakes, too many turnovers, too many fumbles and interceptions. If he cleans all that up, and again, a lot of guys mature, in their progression. If Taylor Green is better this year, watch out. Arkansas, I'm not saying they're going to be a playoff team, but a team that will win some games they're not supposed to, make some noise. Maybe it's a 7-5, 8-4 type season, but that would be a massive improvement for Sam Pittman and company. So again, this is where I wonder, like, is the SEC going to cannibalize itself? Which is certainly can. People want to argue the strength of conferences. To me, a strong conference is not one team 12-0 and everybody else sucking. Dominant conference is anybody can beat anybody on any given Saturday. Look what we had in the SEC last year. We had an upset in the conference every Saturday. And look, my betting account loved it. I made a lot of money last year betting on SEC games. But on the flip side, you better bring your A game every week, because if you don't, you're going to get beat. There's a reason why. What was A&M sitting at 7-1, leading the SEC, and then they go and lose 4 of their last 5. Like this conference will eat its own.
And just look, order finish predicted. You got Vanderbilt sitting there at 13th, and with Diego Pavia on any given Saturday, that guy's got some confidence. They can beat you. They showed that last year.
Again, that's a team. Again, I'll give them. They're going to beat somebody that they're not supposed to. And we'll give you one more here. I think Mississippi State finishes last, but I think they win an SEC game. They win one. I don't know which one it'll be, but I think they play spoiler. If Blake Shapen back healthy, the weapons they have on offense, they're going to score some points. They were in some close games last year with Michael Van Buren, who was the backup. So I think State doesn't go winless in the conference. I think they win a game. Kentucky is the tough one. Kentucky's the ultimate wild card.
Not a believer in Zach Calzada?
I think I counted over 50 guys they've brought in through the portal. I was joking, like, you're going to have to get a program. I think they open with Toledo. If you're a Kentucky fan, you're going to have a program going. Who the hell's number 16? Who's number 4? Like, you're not going to know who any of these guys are. But it's the ultimate crapshoot for Mark Stoops. Either this thing bombs and you're the worst team in the SEC and you get fired, or maybe you find lightning in a bottle. Some of these pieces click. Calzada, if he's the quarterback, like, maybe they win some games. And I think 6-6, if Kentucky gets there, that saves his job and they get back to a bowl game. But, like, again, just another team that could create some madness on the season. Look at last year; they had one of Mark Stoops' best wins of his career, beating Ole Miss, that knocked him out of the playoff.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. When I was looking through the preseason magazines, I just forgot that Calzada was going to Kentucky. I said, this can't be right. I pulled out I was in Lindy's. I looked at Athlon. I said, okay, he is back in the conference. So good.
Don't forget, they have a kid named Cutter Boley, who was a true freshman last year. They're very high on. And I've been told by a few people that don't be surprised. Like, they may roll out Calzada to start the opener, but don't be surprised if they go like, by script, maybe second half, but Boley comes out and gets the start just to see what they have in both. So I wouldn't. Calzada's got skins on the wall and he's thrown for tons of yards at all his different stops, but I wouldn't automatically just assume he's going to start all year at Kentucky.
Yeah. So the whole conference interesting. And Chris, I appreciate you coming on the show. I told you 20. We've gone over 30 minutes here. It's been a blast having y'all talking all things SEC football. Before I let you go, can you let the listeners and viewers where can they find you on the work you're doing?
Yeah, Locked On the SEC, wherever you get your podcasts. We are less than 400 subscribers away from hitting our 10,000 mark. Our audio version's been around for years, and we're always consistently during football season a top 100 sports podcast and all that. We appreciate everybody subscribing, but we've been building up that video following. And so if you give us a follow there, we're hoping to get to 10,000 for the start of football season and hopefully skyrocket from there. So again, great interviews we got all week at SEC Media Days for anybody who missed it, and Locked On SEC, wherever you get your podcast.
All right, everybody, go check it out. And Chris, once again, I appreciate your time, and I look forward when we get to do this again.
Awesome. Anytime, man. Appreciate it.
All right. Once again, thanks to Chris Gordy for being on this edition of the Phillip Jordan Show podcast. Now, as we kind of get out of here for this week's edition, because I am a Troy student, I rep the Troy Trojans here on the show very, very often. Just real quickly, the Sunbelt media poll, the Sunbelt puts the media poll out before their media days, so it's a little bit different than some of the other conferences. In the West, they got at 1 Louisiana, number 2 Texas State, 3 Arkansas State, 4 South Alabama. Number 5 will be Southern Miss, 6 Troy, 7 Louisiana Monroe, and then in the East, James Madison at number 1. Then you've got Georgia Southern, App State, Coastal Carolina, Old Dominion, Marshall, and Georgia State. That wraps up your media poll for the Sun Belt Conference. Now, let's jump into some questions. I post on my social media, Facebook, Twitter, ask me anything, get some questions. We've got 6 of them, and we are going to dive into those right now. And we're going to start things off with Richard Holdridge. Richard, thanks always for a question. How much of an upgrade at quarterback does Auburn have with Jackson Arnold? I think a major upgrade. Jackson Arnold, when he came out 2023, when he signed with Oklahoma, one of the top quarterbacks, if not the best quarterback in the state of Texas, one of the best recruits out there during that cycle. Now, you look at Peyton Thorne, who had some moments at Michigan State, but never was that level of talent. And Jackson Arnold really got dealt a bad hand last year. The top 5 receivers for Oklahoma gone, offensive line issues, just offensive issues all around together. I think they gave up too early in the season on Jackson Arnold when he got benched. So I think he's kind of a player. He is obviously an upgrade over Peyton Thorne at quarterback. Jake Martin asks, who wins the Big 12? I think that's going to be Arizona State once again. I know they're going to have to find who's going to be the next guy running back, but quarterback Sam Levitt returns, 4 offensive linemen. They got some receivers coming back as well, and also 9 players on defense. They should be really good on the defense side of the ball too. So I know somebody think that's a cop-out. I know Kansas State's a favorite in a lot of preseason magazines, but I'm going to go with Arizona State to win the Big 12. Wes Pruitt, what is the bigger risk to longevity of the sport? The constant change or the pressure that brings on more mental health issues to be dealt with now and down the road from players and coaches? Wes with a very deep question. I don't know if he knew who he was sending that message to when he sent it. A little bit deeper than what we usually go into here on the show. Just looking at it, the longevity of the sport, the constant change or pressure brings on more. Yeah, man, that's tough. You know, I'm going to kind of cop out of this one, Wes, and I'm just going to kind of jump into both things here. The constant change. I think if you're going to look at damaging of the sport to the fan base, I think if you start making college athletics look a lot different than they are or what they have been, your traditional fans may look the other way. And then also, if they're looking at something that looks so much like the National Football League, that could also be something that causes problems. I honestly think one of the best things with basketball is that the college game and the NBA game are two different things. Now, if the college game starts looking more like the NBA game, then we could have some problems there. Mental issues to be dealt with now down the road. Players and coaches, there's tremendous pressure. And I think most athletes and coaches, which coaches were athletes, most of them, are capable of dealing with those pressures, but some aren't. And I think there does need to be a little bit something more in place to make sure the players are okay, because not everyone handles everything the same way. So there could be some issues down the road with that. Feeling pressure not good enough, and players could definitely use some experts on the team, I think, that can help them deal with that kind of stuff more often. Charles McNally, is Nick Saban back to coach Auburn? No, that's not going to happen. He would be the ultimate in the wrestling terms heel if he ever did something like that. Craig McMichael, what club are you hitting from 75 yards out? Also, is it still all in the hips? So obviously Craig decided, and I told him this on X when he sent this in, that you going to ask me a question about sport I don't know anything about. Look, I'm not a golf guy, not a golf expert. Play a little putt here and there. I think I swung a golf club at a driving range maybe once or twice. So I cheated on this question. I went to ChatGPT and asked him, and it said, if you're 75 yards out, you're likely in wedge territory. The exact club depends on your skill level, swing speed, and comfort. So that's the answer for that one. All the hips, I will say that it's got to be all the hips. That is without a doubt. All right, and the last question from Hogs Happy Hour. Who will have more SEC wins? Notre Dame, who plays Texas A&M and Arkansas, or Kentucky? This is quite an interesting question. So I look at that Notre Dame, Texas A&M be tough, Arkansas. So I say let's just assume Notre Dame beats both of them. I don't think they will. It might go 1-1. I think A&M is going to get them back this year. So go 1-1, maybe beat Arkansas, but lose to A&M. I'm sorry, Hogs Happy Hour. You know you guys cover Arkansas, but we're just out there. So let's look at the Kentucky schedule, SEC schedule. Of course, they open up with Toledo. Ole Miss. I don't think they beat Ole Miss. I do not think they beat South Carolina. I do not think they beat Georgia. I do not think they beat Texas. Tennessee, watch us slip up and win at Auburn. Florida, Vanderbilt. Wow. When I saw the question, I was really thinking to myself, surely they can win 3. Yeah, I don't know. Oh, again, Ole Miss is tough. I mean, South Carolina, Georgia, Texas, Tennessee, Auburn, Florida, and Vanderbilt. Where do I see potential SEC wins? Now, last year they did upset Ole Miss in Kentucky. So maybe early in the year, Ole Miss is still trying to figure stuff out with quarterback. Maybe Vanderbilt end of the year. That would be 2. You know what? I can't believe I'm saying. So if Notre Dame was to beat both A&M and Arkansas too, I'm now thinking maybe Kentucky doesn't get it. It's gonna be tough. That is a tough schedule. That is a tough schedule, and their non-conference schedule. Let's just look at that. I know what wrote the question: Toledo, Eastern Michigan, Tennessee Tech, of course, Louisville. Man, it might be a battle and a struggle for Kentucky to get to 6 wins. Looking at that schedule, it's gonna be tough. All right, so I said at the beginning of the show that had some somber news. So this is maybe a part of the show where most people may want to go the other direction, may not want to listen to this. This is going to be Birmingham Stallions talk right here on the pod. And so James Larson from the Pro Football Newsroom, James Larson is like the Adam Schefter of the UFL and spring football, no doubt. And he put out some disappointing and some sad situations for the UFL. More importantly, for the Birmingham Stallions, the good guys, as I always like to call them on social media. So he put out a tweet, and I'm going to read it for you here. Breaking: major changes are coming to the UFL per multiple sources. USFL markets in Michigan, Houston, Birmingham, and Memphis are all being relocated for the 2026 season. So that's all Birmingham. Sadness was coming over me. Plenty more changes to come. The UFL is blowing it up this offseason. Then he continued. Sources: the 4 new UFL markets will be Boise, Idaho, Columbus, Ohio, Florida, likely Orlando, and Kentucky, Louisville, or Lexington. Blockbuster moves to be announced by the league over the coming weeks. There was more. He put some more changes to the UFL. The Arlington Renegades are likely being rebranded to the Texas Renegades or something along those lines. Conference changes are on the way. USFL, XFL brands are officially dead. I never liked that anyways. No surprise, the UFL announced a huge sale on merch day. I did look at the store. There's a lot of stuff that's marked down by half price. And he continued with more. Dennis Larson just reading all his tweets here on the pod today. Sadly, news got out before I could put together a full legitimate piece on everything going on. I had to talk about how he's going to have some work, written stuff out there. He said everything I've heard the last few weeks, including within the last 24 hours from multiple sources, been pointed to Boise being one of the 4 cities for relocation in the UFL. That said, there is a situation where the league pivots to Oklahoma City or Tulsa, I'm told. Now, he was responding to someone named BJ Rains. Now, let's go look at their profile. What does it say on there? Boise State beat writer, show host, and publisher for Bronco Nation 24/7 Sports. Okay. He said, did some digging on this, and unfortunately, it appears it's unlikely to happen in 2026. Possibly could happen in 2027, but I'm told the league looked into the possibility and let the pivot for next season. So we'll see. And that's pretty much it from that side of things. Now the UFL has kind of come out and, in a sense, deny some of these. They hadn't really confirmed that they're not moving these teams, but they put out the classic statement. So we shall see what is going to happen here. I am a big Birmingham Stallions fan. And I saw this news tonight. I just had to close it on this. I was going to go off on the WNBA. It is part of the show, but that news hit, and I said I got to talk about this instead. So my fingers crossed. Maybe Birmingham doesn't move. I've gone to a game the last 3 years. I didn't go the first year. Last 3 years, I have gone to one, and a lot of fun. So let's fingers crossed that the Stallions, who's won 3 spring titles in 4 years of existence, do not go away. That's going to do it. Again, thanks, Chris Gordy, for coming on. A lot of fun talking with him. Thanks for the questions here on the show. I hope you enjoyed it. We'll be back next week with some more great sports talk and all that good stuff. And I got a big guest coming up in a few weeks, potentially. Really excited about what's coming up there. But anyways, I'm going to get out of here. Again, appreciate you checking out the show. Please share the show. Tell people why I should be listening to the Phillip Jordan Show podcast. Maybe you can follow me on social media at PJordanSCC. And, of course, check out all my written work at the Auburn Wire. And, guys, appreciate it once again. Till next time. Bye-bye.